Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, overwhelmed by the intensity of your own thoughts and feelings, wondering if anyone else experiences the world quite like you do? That moment when you're caught between feeling everything so deeply and trying to make sense of it all, that's the daily reality for many intuitive introverts, particularly those who identify as INFJ. But what if I told you that one of history's greatest psychological minds, Carl Jung, left behind a treasure trove of wisdom specifically relevant to people like you? His insights aren't just theoretical musings, they're practical tools that could transform how you navigate your unique way of being in the world. The shadow self, your greatest fear, might be your greatest gift. The concept of the shadow self might sound intimidating, but Jung's perspective on it is actually incredibly liberating for INFJ. Imagine your psyche as a vast ocean. What most people see is just the surface, but beneath lies a depth of complexity that even you might not fully understand. Jung believed that INFJ, with their natural tendency toward perfectionism and their desire to maintain harmony, often push their darker emotions, anger, jealousy, resentment, into what he called the shadow self. But here's where it gets interesting. These suppressed aspects of yourself aren't your enemies, they're actually untapped sources of power and growth. Think about those moments when you felt too sensitive, too emotional, too intense for others to handle. Jung would argue that these very qualities, when properly integrated, become your greatest strengths. For instance, that intensity that makes you feel like an outsider, it's the same quality that allows you to understand others at a depth most people never reach. Consider this: your capacity to feel deeply isn't a fault in your design, it's a feature. When an INFJ learns to embrace their shadow self, something remarkable happens. That same sensitivity that sometimes feels overwhelming becomes a tool for deeper understanding. Your ability to sense others' pain transforms from a burden into a gift, because you're no longer fighting against your natural way of being. The Introverts Paradox: why your need for solitude makes you better with people. One of Jung's most revolutionary insights, especially relevant to INFJ, was his understanding of introversion as an energy orientation rather than a social preference. This distinction is crucial. While the world might see your need for solitude as antisocial or aloof, Jung would argue that it's actually what makes you exceptional at understanding human nature. Think of your introversion like a sophisticated processing system. When you retreat from the world, you're not just recharging, you're engaging in a complex internal dialogue that helps you make sense of human behavior, emotions, and motivations. It's during these quiet moments that your intuitive function really shines, connecting dots that others might miss entirely. Moreover, Jung would explain that your need for solitude serves a vital purpose in maintaining the depth of your insights. Unlike extroverts who process information through external interaction, your best understanding comes through internal reflection. This means that those hours spent alone, often questioned by others, are actually crucial to maintaining your unique ability to understand and help people. The paradox lies in this: the more you honor your need for solitude, the more effective you become in your interactions with others. It's like charging a battery. The fuller your internal reserves, the more energy you have to invest in meaningful connections. Jung would encourage INFJ to see their introversion not as a limitation to overcome, but as a necessary component of their unique gift for understanding human nature. The intuition connection: learning to trust your inner voice. Your intuition as an INFJ isn't just some vague feeling or random hunch. It's a sophisticated information processing system that Jung believed was directly connected to what he called the collective unconscious. Think of it as having access to humanity's shared emotional and experiential database. When you get those gut feelings about people or situations, you're not just making things up, you're tapping into patterns and insights that exist beyond conscious awareness. Jung would explain that your intuitive function works like a highly advanced pattern recognition system. While others might need to gather explicit evidence to understand a situation, your mind naturally connects seemingly unrelated pieces of information to form accurate insights. This is why you often just know things about people or situations without being able to explain exactly how you know. However, many INFJ struggle with trusting this ability. In a world that values concrete evidence and logical reasoning above all else, your intuitive insights might feel unreliable or even foolish. Jung would argue that this doubt isn't just unnecessary, it's actually detrimental to your natural gifts. He would encourage you to keep a journal of your intuitive hits, noting when your initial impressions prove accurate. Over time, this practice builds confidence in your natural way of processing information. The key is understanding that your intuition isn't competing with logic, it's complementing it. When you learn to trust both your intuitive insights and your rational mind, you develop a more complete and nuanced understanding of the world around you. This integration of intuition and reasoning is what Jung would consider essential for INFJ development. The art of active imagination, your secret weapon against overthinking. For INFJ, who often find themselves caught in the grip of overthinking, Jung's concept of active imagination offers a revolutionary escape route. But this isn't your typical just stop thinking so much advice. Instead, Jung would encourage you to channel your natural tendency for deep contemplation into a more productive and healing direction. Active imagination is like meditation meets creative visualization, but with a uniquely Jungian twist. Instead of trying to empty your mind or force positive thoughts, you're invited to engage with your inner world consciously and creatively. For instance, if you're wrestling with a difficult decision, rather than analyzing it to death, Jung would suggest visualizing it as a conversation with different parts of yourself. These parts might appear as characters, symbols, or scenes in your mind's eye. The beauty of this approach for INFJ lies in how it harnesses your natural strengths. Your rich inner world, which can sometimes feel like a source of overwhelm, becomes a therapeutic tool. You might imagine sitting down with your anxiety as if it were a person and asking what it needs. Or you could visualize your perfectionism as a demanding teacher and negotiate with it for more reasonable standards. This practice isn't about escaping reality, it's about accessing deeper wisdom that your conscious mind might be too busy to notice. Jung found that when we give our unconscious mind a creative outlet, it often provides solutions that our logical mind couldn't reach through analysis alone. For INFJ, who often struggle with paralysis by analysis, this offers a way to move forward that honors both their need for depth and their intuitive nature. The relationship revolution, why INFJ need different boundaries. Perhaps one of Jung's most counterintuitive pieces of advice for INFJ concerns relationships. While your natural empathy and desire to understand others deeply is a gift, Jung would argue that it can also become a trap. The revelation here is that being too understanding, too accommodating, and too attuned to others' needs can actually prevent authentic connections from forming. Think about it this way: when you're constantly morphing yourself to meet others' emotional needs, you're not actually allowing them to know and connect with your true self. Jung would suggest that this pattern, while well-intentioned, creates relationships built on a kind of emotional sleight of hand, rather than genuine understanding. The solution isn't to become less caring or empathetic, it's to develop what Jung would call a conscious relationship with the self. This means acknowledging that your own emotional needs are just as valid as others. It means recognizing that sometimes, the most caring thing you can do is maintain firm boundaries, even when that creates temporary discomfort for others. For instance, instead of automatically absorbing others' emotions, Jung would encourage you to practice emotional differentiation. This means consciously asking yourself, is this my feeling, or am I picking up on someone else's? When you notice yourself taking on others' emotional states, practice imagining a protective bubble around yourself, not to shut others out, but to maintain your own emotional clarity. The career conundrum: finding purpose without burning out. For INFJ, choosing a career isn't just about making a living, it's about finding meaning and purpose. Jung would have a lot to say about the unique challenges INFJ face in the modern workplace, particularly the tendency to burn out from emotional overload while pursuing their calling. The key insight Jung would offer is that your ideal career path isn't necessarily the one that looks most impressive on paper, or even the one that helps the most people directly. Instead, it's the path that allows you to express your authentic self, while maintaining healthy boundaries. This might mean choosing a role that provides a balance of meaningful interaction and solitary work, rather than one that keeps you constantly engaged with others. Consider how your dominant functions, introverted intuition and extroverted feeling, need to be honored in your work. A role that requires constant rapid decisions based on concrete data might drain you, while one that allows you to work with patterns and help others in a structured way could energize you. Jung would emphasize that finding this balance isn't a luxury, it's a necessity for your psychological well-being. The creativity connection: why INFJ need artistic expression. Jung held a profound appreciation for the role of creativity in psychological health, and this is particularly relevant for INFJ. Your rich inner world needs regular outlets for expression, not just as a hobby, but as a vital form of psychological maintenance. This creative expression doesn't have to result in masterpieces. The process itself is what matters. When you engage in creative activities, whether it's writing, painting, music, or any other form of artistic expression, you're doing more than just passing time. You're giving form to the abstract insights and complex emotions that characterize your inner experience. Jung would explain that this process helps integrate your conscious and unconscious mind, leading to greater psychological wholeness. For INFJ, artistic expression serves another crucial function. It provides a bridge between your rich inner world and the external world. Your intuitive insights and emotional understanding often defy conventional expression. Through creative work, you can communicate these deeper truths in ways that others can understand and appreciate. The social balance, creating meaningful connections without exhaustion. For INFJ, social interaction isn't just about being around people, it's about the depth and quality of those interactions. Jung would emphasize that your need for meaningful connections shouldn't come at the expense of your emotional well-being. This is where his concept of energy management becomes particularly relevant for INFJ. Consider how you feel after different types of social interactions. Large group gatherings might leave you feeling drained, while deep one-on-one conversations energize you. Jung would explain this isn't just personal preference, it's related to how your cognitive functions operate. Your extroverted feeling function thrives in situations where you can genuinely connect with others, but it requires the support of your introverted intuition, which needs space and time to process these interactions. The solution isn't to become a hermit or force yourself to be more outgoing. Instead, Jung would advocate for what we might call strategic socializing. This means being intentional about your social engagements, choosing quality over quantity, and creating what he would call sacred spaces for deeper connections. For instance, rather than attending every social event you're invited to, select those that allow for meaningful interaction. Instead of trying to maintain numerous superficial friendships, focus on nurturing a smaller circle of deeper relationships. Moreover, Jung would encourage you to see your selective social nature not as a limitation but as a strength. Your ability to create deep, meaningful connections is rare and valuable. When you honor this aspect of yourself, you create the conditions for authentic relationships that energize rather than drain you. The growth challenge: embracing your inferior function. One of Jung's most profound insights for INFJ concerns the role of the inferior function, extroverted sensing. While many personality theories might suggest focusing solely on your strengths, Jung would argue that real growth comes from integrating your least developed function in a healthy way. For INFJ, extroverted sensing manifests as awareness of the present moment, physical sensations, and immediate experiences. This is often the function that gets neglected as you focus on future possibilities and abstract patterns. However, Jung would suggest that developing this function is crucial for psychological balance. Think of it this way: your dominant introverted intuition, me, is like a powerful telescope, allowing you to see patterns and possibilities far into the distance. But without the grounding influence of C, you might lose touch with the present moment where life actually happens. Jung would recommend activities that engage your senses mindfully, perhaps through dance, cooking, gardening, or any activity that brings you fully into the present moment. The key is not to force yourself to become a sensory-dominant person, but to develop a healthier relationship with the physical world. This might mean taking regular breaks from abstract thinking to notice the texture of your coffee cup, the play of light through leaves, or the sensation of your feet on the ground. These moments of sensory awareness can serve as anchors, preventing you from getting lost in the abstract realm of possibilities. The self-care revolution: why traditional advice doesn't work for INFJ. When it comes to self-care, Jung would have a radically different perspective for INFJ than what's commonly advised. The typical self-care recommendations, taking bubble baths, going for walks, or practicing standard meditation, might be helpful, but they don't address the unique needs of your personality type. For INFJ, true self-care must account for both your intuitive nature and your need for meaningful engagement. Jung would suggest that effective self-care for you might look more like spending time exploring your inner symbolic world, engaging in creative visualization, or having deep conversations with trusted friends about matters of significance. Furthermore, Jung would emphasize the importance of what he called active rest periods, where you're not just physically resting but engaging in activities that restore your particular type of energy. This might include journaling about patterns you've observed, creating art that expresses your inner visions, or engaging in contemplative practices that allow you to process your intuitive insights. The revolution in self-care for INFJ comes from understanding that you need both physical and psychological restoration. Your self-care routine should include activities that honor your need for meaning and depth, while also addressing your physical well-being. This might mean combining traditional self-care practices with more INFJ-specific approaches, like creating a ritual around your morning coffee that includes both sensory awareness and intuitive reflection. The path to individuation, your unique journey to wholeness. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming your most authentic self, takes on special significance for INFJ. This journey isn't about becoming a better version of someone else's ideal. It's about integrating all aspects of yourself into a coherent whole. For INFJ, individuation often involves reconciling seemingly contradictory aspects of your nature: your desire to help others with your need for solitude, your intuitive insights with practical realities, your idealism with the imperfections of the real world. Jung would emphasize that these tensions aren't problems to be solved, but rather dynamic opposites that create the energy for growth. The path to individuation for an INFJ might involve accepting your sensitivity as a strength while developing resilience, learning to trust your intuition while staying grounded in reality, maintaining your ideals while accepting the imperfect nature of life, helping others while honoring your own needs, developing your inferior function without losing your natural gifts. Conclusion: the INFJ journey forward. In concluding this exploration of Jung's advice for INFJ, it's important to recognize that your journey is uniquely your own. While Jung's insights provide valuable guidance, the real work lies in integrating these principles in a way that honors your individual path. Your sensitivity, intuition, and depth of understanding are not burdens to be overcome but gifts to be refined. The challenge isn't to change who you are but to become more fully yourself. As Jung would say, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Remember that your journey isn't about reaching a destination but about continuous growth and integration. Your ability to see beneath the surface, to understand complex patterns, and to connect deeply with others isn't just valuable, it's essential in a world that often prioritizes superficial understanding over depth. As you move forward, carry with you the understanding that your INFJ nature isn't something to fix or change, it's something to embrace and develop. Your path might look different from others, and that's exactly as it should be. In Jung's view, that uniqueness isn't just acceptable, it's necessary for the psychological health of both the individual and the collective.